Hey everyone, we know how hard it can be to keep up with the latest news in Israel. So if you haven't had the time to stay on top of what's what in the Holy Land, we're here for you. I'm Ladar Gavelazi, and this is ILTV's Weekly Review.
From the IDF's major advancements on the ground in Gaza City to the summit Arab and Muslim leaders held on how they will respond to Israel's strike on Hamas's terror leadership living and existing in Doha, Qatar. Let's discuss all of it. Joining us now to help us make sense of it is Brigadier General Reserve Dani Van Buren, former Chief Reserve Officer of the IDF and founder and chairman of Nikraim Ladegel. Thanks so much for being with us today. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Overnight, massive explosions were heard in Gaza City with confirmation 3 different divisions of tens of thousands of soldiers will actually be operating in the area of Gaza City within the next few days. How significant is the timing of these major moves by the military?
Yeah, I think we've come to the point that we realize that the attempt to combine both military means and diplomatic measures, and in terms of negotiations to try to find a way to finish this war are not meeting our goals. And the only alternative which is left to Israel is to do the final move in terms of eliminating the rest of Hamas infrastructures and leaders in order to create a new situation on the grounds where Israel will be able to live peacefully without being threatened by Hamas. And I think this is the main logic of this operation, both to finalize the war and take Hamas out of power and to release the hostages. And in these 2 means to create a new narrative that, terror doesn't pay off in terms of what Hamas committed on October 7th.
And going back to the pressure that Israel is currently putting on Hamas, what other options does Israel even have on the table at this point in time to pressure the terror group into a deal? Because it seems as if, Hamas terrorists are staying in Gaza City, but what other options come after this if this doesn't work?
I think this should work because we did try to find a way to as I mentioned before, to combine the diplomatic means. I think what the major we should realize that the major goal of any terror organization is to create chaos and fear within the society that it is fighting against. In regarding Israel, we see that the inner conflict in Israel is working on the benefit of Hamas, and we should all remember this in order to not to let Hamas gain his achievements that he wishes to do so. And we should admit that the current pressure being put on Israel by the international community, mainly using the bias campaign of starvation in Gaza and so on, is also a burden on Israel. So the best way for us currently is to finish the war in order, to create the situation on the grounds when Hamas is defeated, and this will enable all of us to work on a new international infrastructure of Gaza and being able to create new order in this area.
Sure. So as the IDF approaches, Gaza City, it's pretty much brand new territory. It's brand new urban territory for them. What's usually the first steps or the initial steps they take when they enter brand new location like this?
I'm not sure it's a brand new. There are some neighborhoods which the IDF so far was not present in, mainly because we were suspected their hostages are being held in these locations. But as we all see during the last 2 or 3 weeks, the IDF puts a lot of pressure by using Air Force in order to take down towers and buildings that can be a threat to the ground operation in terms of being able to observe the IDF movements and even eliminate or hurt the Israeli soldiers. So these means were all committed within the last 2 weeks, and the second attempt used by Israel and the IDF is to try to separate the local population from Hamas. And part of the reason that we saw last night at the beginning of the actual work on the ground and the tanks movement and so on was to show the local population that we mean business, and it's not just a drill. So the best option for them would be to evacuate to the humanitarian zones, and so they won't be hurt. This will enable the IDF to fight in an area which is not populated and really put an end to the Hamas activities, both against Israel and against, to be honest, against its own population.
Thank you so much for your perspective on all of this. Of course, we're continuing to follow all the developments in real time as all of this is consistently moving from day to day. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And in other news, a huge pro-Israel advocate, Charlie Kirk, recently wrote a letter to Prime Minister Netanyahu, who says the conservative commentator was supposed to visit Israel within the next few weeks. But his assassination is now being fueled by internet trolls online, claiming Israel and its spy agency, the Mossad, were behind the gruesome murder. The Prime Minister and the Anti-Defamation League condemn what they call anti-Semitic blatant lies. ILTV's Shosh Bedrosian joins us with the details. So, Shosh, what can you tell us? I mean, more anti-Israel internet theories, not much of a surprise.
Well, we know that 22-year-old Tyler Robinson is currently in custody at this time for the assassination of Charlie Kirk. After nearly a 30-hour manhunt, ultimately his father turned him in. But people online were quick to rush and to blame the Jewish people and Israel for his death. Horrific anti-Semitic and anti-Israel rumors are spreading online. Israel rumors are wildfire that Israel and the Jewish people could possibly be behind his murder last week in Utah. Despite Robinson's arrest and his political beliefs and alignment, users on social media have continued to spread these rumors.
The whole thing is, it's not only insane, I think it's so absurd, so stupid and so ridiculous. You can't believe that people are saying this. They just found the perpetrator. They'll get to the bottom of this. But they go, they have no limits. When you hate Jews, when you hate the Jewish state, you're willing to say anything and promote all these absurd rumors.
Within hours of Kirk's assassination, and even before the suspect was identified, the ADL says false narratives attributed the tragedy to Israel and blaming Jews in general. It's happened at a time when there's already an unprecedented threat level against the Jewish community. The ADL says one of those rumors suggested Israel or Jewish organizations colluded to have Kirk killed because he had supposedly become more critical of Israel lately. The ADL says eventually more than 10,000 posts on X included the phrase, quote, Israel killed Charlie Kirk.
When people spread these lies about us, prepare yourself for the assault. And, they're trying to delegitimize the state of Israel. Charlie Kirk said to me that he wrote me this detailed letter. You have to fight the slander. These untruths, these vilifications have consequences. And he was right. But I'll tell you one thing. We're fighting on the battlefield against the terrorists and winning. And he was fighting on the battlefield of ideas. And I think he was winning.
Despite the hateful rumors, Israelis are continuing to show support for Kirk as the pro-Israel advocate spread fact and not fiction about the Jewish state, according to people who live here. Murals like this one are just one of several tributes that were created over the weekend, honoring the 31-year-old's legacy. The 22-year-old will now face formal charges and is expected to make his first court appearance on Tuesday. And joining us now to discuss the developments of the war in Gaza is Colonel retired Miri Eisen, a senior fellow at the International Institute for Counterterrorism. Thanks so much for being with us, as always.
Always a pleasure.
Miri, I first want to start by asking you about the amount of terrorists you think that could still be operating in Gaza City. We know the population is roughly about 1 million people, but officials here are indicating there could be thousands of terrorists that fight back the IDF once they arrive. What's your take?
So we've already been fighting in the Gaza Strip for 23 months. We've already taken out, I even want to say tens of thousands of terrorists. But the population of the Gaza Strip is made up out of over 2 million people, half of them under the age of 18. And there's no question that that younger generation, and I say it very sadly, the 16, the 17, the 18-year-olds are also going to be trained, newly trained. So I think that we're still looking at thousands. That's always going to be a challenge. The question is what weapons they have, how much they manage to continue to do what they've always done, to booby-trap the different areas, to turn the whole urban facade into different positions, you know, in the living room and in the children's room and in the mosque and in the school. So we're looking at thousands of terrorists and endless different possibilities to attack the IDF troops.
Well, with that being said, Miri, I want to ask you about how long this operation could go on in Gaza City, because remember, troops right now in places like Rafah, where there might not be this combat fighting, that's where these explosions are taking place from these explosives that are being planted in these bombed out locations already. But how much longer could this Gaza City offensive actually go on for?
So I want to say sadly, because it doesn't make me happy or you happy, but it can go on for quite a while. What the IDF is doing now is working slowly and systematically. I say that because doing it slowly and systematically saves lives. It doesn't make the war any easier. War is a terrible place. But when you work slowly, systematically, and you do so, it's not about saving the soldiers' lives. It's about protecting, in that sense, in their own defense. It's about saving the civilians. It's about making sure that telling people move to other places where you don't have this high intensity warfare, because all of the Gaza Strip is in a war zone, that makes the whole difference. So I do think, Shosh, that we need to be aware this can take a month or 2 or 3. It's not going to be over tomorrow morning.
And we're hearing that President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu have threatened and warned Hamas not to harm the hostages and use them as human shields. What does that actually mean? We know the IDF spokesperson said that Gaza City is one of the largest human shields in history at this point in time. But literally speaking, can you just give us examples and can you break down for us how they could use the hostages as human shields?
So there are two different aspects. As you said, the human shields is that all of this urban people who are there, there's 1 million people who are inside them, and all of them are used as human shields. They're being told by Hamas not to leave. We're talking now about the hostages, about the people that were taken so brutally on October 7th and have been held, as you said, for over 700 days inside the Gaza Strip. It means that they would take them out of the tunnels where most of the time they're holding them. They hold them there because for them, they are a strategic asset, and they'll bring them out on purpose to do two things. One, I don't know how to put this in non-military terms, but I'm going to say to freak out the troops. Can you imagine what it's like if you would see an Israeli hostage being held outside? But they can do it in a much more traumatic, devious way. They can use footage. They can use the voice. They can suddenly have, you know, a loud speaker blaring with the voice of a hostage. So it's not just about bringing out a human being, putting him out there and doing so on purpose so that that person would be killed by Israeli fire, but also doing it by using the voices, by using footage, by showing it in such a way. All of this done to make sure that the IDF does not act against the Hamas. The IDF is very aware of this. It is not something that they're not aware of. I think the reality is harsher when you actually meet it.
Yeah, thanks for just giving detail on that, because I think people know these generic blanket statements of using hostages as human shields, but not necessarily knowing what it specifically means. I want to ask you, with these thousands of fighters of Hamas that could be in Gaza City, are they panicking in a time like this, knowing the IDF is coming in with significant force?
I think that they're most definitely on what I'm going to call the defense, and that's exactly where we want them to be. They should not be the ones defining the rules of the game. They should not be the ones who are on the initiative against Israeli troops. We're inside urban area. They have an advantage as the defensive force in an urban area. That's why we work slowly, because they have the tunnels and the shafts where they can come out, shoot, and go back into the tunnel. Because they've turned this entire urban area into one big IED, explosive booby trap arena. So you have to take it slowly. I don't think that they're fleeing. I do think that there are going to be those, remember that even though you're showing photographs of them now with uniforms on, on. They're not in uniform,
Right.
Shush. This is also important to tell everybody. They'll flee together with the civilians, wearing civilian clothes, and hide, again, using those civilians as their own human shields.
Miri Eisen, thanks so much for being with us as always. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And Israel is one step closer to bringing its newest spy satellite, Ofek 19, into full operational use. Here's more with ILTV's Mayan Hoffman.
Just under 2 weeks after its launch into orbit on September 2nd, the Ministry of Defense confirmed that Ofek 19 has successfully transmitted its first image back to Earth. The achievement came after a carefully planned series of system checks carried out by the Defense Ministry's Space Directorate, the Israel Aerospace Industries, and IDF Unit 9900. In recent days, the satellite's radar system was activated for the first time, and engineers were able to download its initial pictures to IAI's control station in Yehud. Since liftoff, teams have been gradually powering up and testing each of the satellite subsystems. The successful activation of the radar marks a critical milestone in the satellite's journey toward full operational status. Ofek 19 is equipped with advanced radar technology, enabling it to capture high-resolution images day or night and in all weather conditions. This makes it a vital addition to Israel's growing intelligence capabilities. In the coming weeks, engineers will continue rigorous in-orbit testing to validate the satellite's performance. Once that phase is complete, responsibility for Ofek 19 will be transferred to the IDF's elite unit 9900, which oversees Israel's constellation of surveillance satellites and provides vital intelligence to the military and defense establishment.
Strategic Affairs Minister Ron Dermer is reportedly heading to Paris for a landmark meeting with the Syrian Foreign Minister. Dermer will be joined by U.S. Syria envoy Tom Barrack to discuss an Israeli proposal submitted weeks ago for a security agreement between nations that was since Israel's creation. Israel wants a no-fly zone and a demilitarized strip close to its border with strict limits on Syrian military forces nearby. Police and domestic security are allowed, but no military installations. The plan draws on the 1979 Israel-Egypt framework from the Sinai, where zones closest to Israel face strictest restrictions. Israel also demands an air corridor to facilitate potential strikes on Iranian targets if necessary. Now, in exchange, Israel would withdraw from the buffer zone it currently captured after the overthrow of the al-Assad regime, but would retain control of the Hermon Peak, a key strategic point. Significantly, Syrian forces have already begun withdrawing heavy weapons from southern Syria up to about approximately 10 kilometers outside of Damascus. And if agreed, this deal could be a first step towards setting long-term boundaries between nations at war since Israel's creation.
Benjamin Netanyahu held talks with Secretary of State Marco Rubio in Jerusalem today. It comes as the IDF is expanding its ground offensive in Gaza to suffocate Hamas, and after the IDF targets senior Hamas leadership in Doha, Qatar last week. Rubio expressed the United States' commitment to the security of the State of Israel and the common threat of Hamas and its need to be eliminated. ILTV's Shosh Bedrosian has the details.
Two leaders side by side in Jerusalem. Both Prime Minister Netanyahu and Secretary of State Marco Rubio stand united in Jerusalem on the ongoing fight against terrorism in the Middle East and the requirement to eliminate Hamas in order to end this war.
America has no better ally than Israel. It's obvious that Israel has no better ally than America. You've been a remarkable partner, and our alliance, I think, has been forged for ages. President Trump says, he said to me the other day, he said, remember October 7th. That's what he said. It's like, remember the Alamo, remember October 7th. And we remember. We remember the savagery, we remember the incredible massacre of the innocents.
Both Netanyahu and Rubio also expressed the importance of getting all 48 hostages out of Gaza, dead or alive, after they were savagely kidnapped on October 7th. After Rubio called for the release of all the hostages, he said Hamas must be eliminated as an armed group, which he says President Trump remains committed to as well. Rubio said Hamas must be eliminated as an armed group before all of Gaza can see peace, and so the people of Gaza can have a better future.
The purpose, of our conversations have been about what the president, I'll restate what the president has repeatedly said. He wants every single hostage released He wants Hamas eliminated as a threat, and he wants to then have the United States be helpful in rebuilding Gaza for the future that's going to be peaceful and prosperous and not have elements like Hamas operating. That's the goal. Now, how do we achieve that? How do we get there? That's what we're always talking about. That's what we talked about today. And that's going to continue to be the focus of our engagement in this. We want all of the hostages out.
When asked if Israel's strike against Hamas leaders in Doha, Qatar was successful, Netanyahu says it was successful by showing Hamas terrorists that no matter where they go and are located, Israel will find them and they will be targeted. Qatar, a country that harbors Hamas leaders who live in luxury, has condemned the strike on their soil alongside several European countries as well. Netanyahu says there is immense hypocrisy and pointed out the United Nations resolution that was approved after 9/11 that no country can harbor terrorists. The United States did conduct their covert operation inside of Pakistan to eliminate mastermind terrorist Osama bin Laden. Secretary of State Marco Rubio will head to Qatar after this stop in Israel, according to reports. Right now, U.S. Ambassador to Turkey and Special Envoy for Syria Thomas Barrack is also in Qatar right now. The Air Force once again targeted the Houthi Hodeidah port in Yemen as the Iranian-backed terror group continues firing ballistic missiles towards Israel. ILTV's Steve Leibowitz has more.
The Israeli Air Force struck yet again at the heart of the Houthi terror regime, targeting Hodeidah port in Yemen, the main supply hub for military gear to the Iranian-backed Houthi regime. Hours later, the Houthis targeted Jerusalem with a missile that was shot down by air defense without causing damage or injury. In the latest Israeli airstrikes, upward of 10 targets were hit in Hodeidah, including 3 docks that had been restored after previous attacks. The operation lasted about 10 minutes, with docks and other critical infrastructure taken out. Colonel Avichai Edrei, the IDF's Arabic spokesman, issued a clear warning hours before the attack to Yemeni civilians and anchored vessels at Hodeidah port, who were immediately urged to leave the area. Defense Minister Katz said Israel intends to maintain its maritime and air blockade against the Houthi terror network, and the port is its lifeline for their war efforts and propaganda operations. Prime Minister Netanyahu said the latest strike was a direct response to repeated UAV and ballistic missile attacks launched against Israel.
חמ"ל בקריה יחד עם שר הביטחון, סגן הרמטכ"ל, ראש המל"ל ומפקדים בכירים של צה"ל. כוחותינו פועלים בכמה וכמה זירות. לפני דקות אחדות הטייסים שלנו תקפו את נמל חודדה בתימן. זה נמל האספקה הראשי של משטר הטרור של החות'ים.
The latest Israeli strike in Yemen came as the Houthis were still holding funerals for 30 Houthis killed in last week's Israeli airstrikes in Sana'a.
For more of the latest updates from Israel, make sure to subscribe to our newsletter at iltv.tv or download the ILTV Plus app. That's it for ILTV's weekly review. See you next week.